Here's what's making news now around Indiana, brought to you by Chapman Heating, Air Conditioning and Plumbing. The man for all seasons, Chapman, chapmanheating.com. Well, we're less than 60 days away now from Election Day, and the results November 3, or whenever they ultimately are counted, will certainly have significant impact on the Indiana economy. This week, PNC hosted a virtual forecast event with high-profile economic and political analysts weighing in on potential outcomes. I asked AGF Investments Chief U.S. Policy Strategist Greg Valeri his take on what's at stake for Indiana.
This is a very big election on many fronts, including for the state of Indiana. I think that regulatory policy would be dramatically different depending on who wins. I think there are a lot of sectors, such as fossil fuels, where the Democrats would be more aggressive, where the president would be more friendly. Healthcare as well. I think the government would play a bigger role if Joe Biden won. That doesn't mean that it's totally black and white. I think a Biden victory would be a plus for trade. I think Biden would not be as reliant on tariffs, which many countries and companies don't like, than if the president won. The president probably would continue to rely on tariffs. So many big differences.
Also at that event, Mark Hoffman, who's the head of portfolio management at PNC Asset Management Group, voiced concern about the impact the pandemic will have on states and local budgets, cities and towns facing huge revenue shortfalls that will be felt in the coming months. Well, a closely held Warsaw-based crop insurance company has announced big plans to expand its campus in the Kosciuszko County city. Silvius Insurance Group says it will acquire property and buildings as part of the expansion and add nearly 50 jobs over 2 years. That is nearly doubling its workforce. Well, it's made Indiana Landmark's 10 Most Endangered List for a second straight year. Located just outside of downtown Indianapolis, the Church of the Holy Cross is steeped in Irish Catholic history that dates all the way back to the late 19th century. But now the iconic church sits empty and faces an uncertain future. Around Indiana reporter Mary-Rachel Redman has details.
In Ireland, Irish Catholics couldn't even have a church.
Which is why this iconic church on the city's Near East Side is so special to so many.
This was very much an Irish Catholic enclave. We just grew with it. It's part of the heart of the Irish community.
Irish immigrants found their way to Indianapolis looking for opportunity and a place to worship. But like the homeland they left, they faced a new set of challenges.
At the time this was built, the Ku Klux Klan had taken over Indiana. They had elected a mayor, they had elected a governor, they were marching around in sheets. They were Irish Americans that had given their sons from Civil War, World War I. Everybody had fought for this country, and then in the 20s, here comes the Ku Klux Klan to tell Irish Americans they weren't American.
In spite of that hate, this new Irish community answered with hard work. And the Church of the Holy Cross opened its doors in 1921, serving as a beacon of pride for decades to come.
That's how this got built, was all these families came together and bought different pieces and put it together. And that's why when you went in there, it was a celebration of the Irish community's success and the ability to raise a building and celebrate their faith, which was incredibly important to them because they'd been persecuted for so long.
These whiteboards behind me once contained the original 120-year-old stained glass windows, removed just last year by the Archdiocese when Holy Cross closed its doors. Now the once sacred sanctuary sits in darkness.
So the reality is the windows are gone, but look to the future and come up with something better that serves the adaptive reuse.
And Holy Cross is just one of the many historic churches across the country that are being forced to close their doors due to decreased attendance, a trend that continues to grow.
That is a serious sign of the future, that these congregations that sustain these historic buildings are declining. So the end result is that we can anticipate many closed or vacant church buildings, many of which are historic and sometimes the great landmarks in their community, as is the Holy Cross Church. What do we do with these buildings once they are vacated?
And with an uncertain future, residents of the Holy Cross neighborhood are hoping they can find a way to save a landmark that defines their community.
Come up with an adaptive reuse that enhances this community of Holy Cross, which is named after this church. I mean, that spire, that tower, that Italianate Renaissance iconic figure for this side of town is not going to go away, hopefully. It's going to be enhanced.
Mary-Rachel Redman, Inside Indiana Business.